there's a person at the next table speaking too loudly. Not shouting, not doing anything unforgivable, just talking with a confidence that fills more space than it needs to. Their hands move as they describe something they accomplished. Their voice rises slightly when someone listens. They laugh at their own story. They seem pleased with themselves in a way that should be easy to ignore, but something inside you tightens. The jaw closes. The eyes move away. The mind begins its work almost instantly. Arrogant, fake, desperate for attention, shallow, empty. One small behavior becomes a whole person. One loud sentence becomes a moral diagnosis. You do not simply notice them. You begin building a case against them. And the strange part is not that you dislike something. Dislike is ordinary. Judgment is ordinary. Human beings constantly read the room, assess danger, detect vanity, notice dishonesty, sense manipulation, and decide who feels safe. The strange part is the heat. The reaction is too large for the event. The person at the next table has become more than annoying. They have become symbolic. They are no longer just a person speaking too loudly in a cafe. They are everything false, everything vulgar, everything needy, everything you refuse to be. That is where projection begins to reveal itself. Not in every judgment, not in every irritation, not in the simple fact that someone bothers you. Projection begins to appear when the reaction has more energy than the situation can explain. When a small trait in another person seems to demand an inner trial. When you do not only think, "I dislike that," you think, "Someone like that should be exposed." Before asking whether the other person is truly that bad, there is a darker question. Why does your mind need them to be that bad? Projection is often described too simply. People say, what you hate in others is what you hate in yourself. Sometimes that is true. Often it is too crude. You may hate cruelty because cruelty is real. You may hate dishonesty because dishonesty harms. You may hate arrogance because arrogance does damage. Not every moral reaction is hidden self-recognition. Some things are worth seeing clearly, but projection is not the existence of judgment. It is the outsourcing of inner conflict. It is the mind taking something it cannot bear to own and placing it on another person's face. It turns the outside world into a screen for the rejected parts of the self. Then it calls the screen the problem. Freud described projection as a defense mechanism. A person carries a feeling, impulse, desire, fear, or trait that creates too much conflict inside the ego. Rather than experience it as mine, the mind relocates it. The anger is not mine. They are hostile. The envy is not mine. They are arrogant. The desire is not mine. They are seductive. The selfishness is not mine. They are greedy. The weakness is not mine. They are pathetic. In this sense, projection is not simply a mistake. It is protection. The mind protects the image of the self by moving unbearable material outward. It preserves the sentence, "I am not that," by making the world appear full of people who are. This is why projection can feel so convincing. It does not arrive like imagination. It arrives like perception. The projected trait seems obvious, external, undeniable. The other person really does look selfish. They really do look vain. They really do seem manipulative, weak, needy, cold, immoral, fake. The mind does not experience itself as inventing. It experiences itself as noticing. That is what makes it dangerous. The person who projects does not usually feel like they are hiding something from themselves. They feel honest, more honest than everyone else. They feel like the one person willing to see what others are too naive to admit. Projection often wears the face of moral clarity. It says, I am not defending myself. I am seeing through them. Sometimes you are seeing through them. Sometimes you are seeing into yourself and mistaking the glass for a window. Jung took this into deeper territory with the idea of the shadow. The shadow is not simply the evil part of the personality. That is the childish version. The shadow is everything the conscious self has not been able to include in its acceptable image of itself. It may contain aggression, envy, laziness, vanity, need, lust, ambition, dependence, selfishness, weakness, tenderness, playfulness, even vitality. Not only what is bad, what has been banned. A person who builds an identity around being endlessly kind may push anger into the shadow. A person who builds an identity around being independent may push need into the shadow. A person who builds an identity around being humble may push ambition into the shadow. A person who builds an identity around being rational may push emotion into the shadow. The rejected trait does not disappear. It waits outside the official self. Projection is one way the shadow returns. It returns as an enemy. It returns as the coworker whose ambition disgusts you, the friend whose neediness makes you cruel in your thoughts, the stranger whose confidence feels obscene, the partner whose emotionality feels like weakness, the public figure whose vanity becomes almost addictive to hate. Something in them touches something in you that has no permission to exist. Again, this does not mean you secretly are the same as them. The truth is subtler. Their trait may be exaggerated, harmful, or real, but your reaction may still contain your own exiled material. You may not want to dominate people, but perhaps you have exiled your own desire to take up space. You may not be cruel, but perhaps you have exiled your own anger. You may not be shallow, but perhaps you have exiled your own wish to be admired. You may not be weak, but perhaps you have exiled the part of you that wants help. Projection turns a forbidden possibility into a foreign object. This is where the persona matters. For Jung, the persona is the social mask. It is not inherently false. We need masks. We need roles, manners, language, restraint, professionalism, politeness, identity. The persona lets a person enter the world without spilling every private impulse into the room. It is one of the ways civilization becomes possible. But the mask becomes dangerous when a person forgets it is a mask. When they begin to believe they are only the good one, only the strong one, only the rational one, only the honest one, only the selfless one, only the victim, only the helper, only the pure observer. Then every part of the psyche that contradicts the mask must go somewhere. Often, it goes into other people. The person who must see themselves as good becomes obsessed with other people's selfishness. The person who must see themselves as strong becomes contemptuous of weakness. The person who must see themselves as deep becomes disgusted by superficiality. The person who must see themselves as honest becomes fascinated by hypocrisy. The person who must see themselves as above attention becomes furious at anyone who asks to be seen. The more fragile the persona, the more threatening the shadow becomes. This is why projection often has a moral flavor. We rarely project in neutral language. We do not simply say that person is displaying a trait. We say they are disgusting, ridiculous, pathetic, evil, fake, toxic, Weak. The judgment carries a heat that does more than describe. It purifies. By condemning the trait out there, the self feels cleaner in here. There is a secret pleasure in this, a pleasure many people do not admit. Projection can make hatred feel virtuous. It gives the mind someone to reject so that it does not have to examine what has already been rejected inside. The other person becomes a container for psychological waste, and the act of despising them feels like self-protection, but the cost is high. Every projection makes the world less accurate. It turns people into symbols. It flattens them into the trait you cannot tolerate. It also makes the self smaller. The parts of you that were never allowed to speak remain undeveloped. Anger stays primitive because it was never integrated. Need becomes desperate because it was never honored. Ambition becomes shameful because it was never admitted. Tenderness becomes weakness because it was never protected. What you refuse to own does not leave you. It governs you from outside. That is why the cafe reaction matters. The loud person may genuinely be self-centered. They may truly lack awareness. They may really be performing for the room. But your reaction still belongs to you. The heat belongs to you. The need to reduce them to a verdict belongs to you. The strange satisfaction of finding them contemptible belongs to you. Projection begins to loosen when you can hold two truths at once. They may be showing something real, and my reaction may be showing something real too. Most people prefer only one of those truths. Either the other person is the problem, or I am the problem. But projection lives in the space where both may be partly true. The other person may carry a trait. You may carry a disowned relationship to that trait. The world may be giving you information, but so is your own overreaction. This is where ordinary psychology becomes uncomfortable. The mind is not an impartial witness. It edits reality in defense of identity. It does not only ask what happened. It asks, what version of what happened lets me remain who I need to be? Self-serving bias gives this a colder cognitive form. We tend to interpret ourselves in ways that protect a favorable self-image. Our successes reflect our character. Our failures come from circumstances. Our harshness is honesty. Their harshness is cruelty. Our withdrawal is boundary. Their withdrawal is coldness. Our ambition is resilience. Their ambition is ego. Our need is vulnerability. Their need is manipulation. This asymmetry is everywhere. It appears so smoothly that we rarely notice it. When we interrupt, we're excited. When they interrupt, they are disrespectful. When we talk about our achievements, we are finally owning our worth. When they do it, they are showing off. When we protect ourselves, we are healing. When they protect themselves, they are selfish. When we change our mind, we have grown. When they change theirs, they are inconsistent. The mind writes footnotes for itself and verdicts for others. Projection uses this asymmetry as a stage. It takes the trait that would threaten the self and makes it a fact about someone else's character. Then it explains away our own version of the trait as context, injury, necessity, humor, honesty, survival, or exception. We keep the complexity for ourselves. We give the sentence to them. Fundamental attribution error helps name this. We often explain other people's behavior by their character while explaining our own behavior by situation. They yelled because they are aggressive. I yelled because I was under pressure. They lied because they are dishonest. I withheld the truth because the timing was complicated. They want attention because they are vain. I want recognition because I was ignored for years. Again, sometimes these distinctions are valid. Context matters, intent matters, history matters, but the mind rarely distributes context fairly. It becomes generous with the self and severe with the other. Projection intensifies this imbalance until the other person becomes almost inhumanly simple. They are not tired. They are lazy. They are not afraid. They are controlling. They are not wounded. They are manipulative. They are not trying to be seen. They are narcissistic. They are not protecting themselves. They are cold. The projected person becomes a moral cartoon, a single trait wearing a body. This is why projection can destroy relationships. Not through obvious hatred at first, but through repeated misseeing. You do not respond to what the other person did. You respond to what they represent in you. Their silence becomes rejection because you cannot bear your own fear of being unwanted. Their confidence becomes arrogance because you cannot bear your own forbidden wish to be visible. Their sadness becomes weakness because you cannot bear the dependent child inside yourself. Their boundary becomes abandonment because you cannot bear your own hunger to control closeness. Then the relationship becomes crowded, not with two people, but with ghosts. The person in front of you, the people they remind you of, the trait you disowned, the memory you never integrated, the self-image you are trying to protect, the old wound that keeps wearing new faces. Projection says, I am reacting to you. Often, it is reacting through you. Moral hypocrisy research adds another layer. Human beings often evaluate their own moral behavior and the behavior of others with different standards. We know our intentions from the inside. We know other people through fragments. We experience our own compromises as complicated. We experience theirs as revealing. We know the fear behind our worst moments. We do not feel the fear behind theirs. This is why projection becomes so powerful in moral life. We do not only want to be good, we want to feel clean. We want to believe our selfishness is rare, our envy is justified, our cruelty is provoked, our vanity is harmless, our cowardice is practical, our dishonesty is protective, our anger is righteous. But when other people show similar traits, we feel free to judge them without the burden of their interior. We see ourselves under warm light. We see them under interrogation. A person can spend years building a moral identity this way, always finding hypocrisy in others, always detecting vanity, always seeing weakness, always identifying manipulation, always exposing ego. They may be perceptive. They may also be using perception as a hiding place, because insight into others can become a defense against insight into the self. This is one of the more dangerous forms of intelligence. The person is not blind. They see real things. They notice patterns, contradictions, motives, insecurities, and defenses. But their vision points outward with surgical precision and inward with deliberate fog. They become experts in the shadow of everyone around them while remaining strangers to their own. There is a kind of person who can describe every flaw in the room, except the one speaking through their description. This is why projection is so hard to confront. If you tell someone they may be projecting, they often hear accusation. They feel you are saying their judgment is false, their pain is invalid, their perception cannot be trusted. But projection is not always false perception. It is contaminated perception. It may contain truth, But truth mixed with disowned material becomes dangerous because the person cannot tell where observation ends and self-defense begins. A projected judgment often feels urgent. It needs agreement. It wants witnesses. It wants others to confirm that the target really is awful. This is not accidental. Projection often seeks social reinforcement because the rejected inner material keeps threatening to return. If enough people agree that the other person is the problem, the self can remain untouched a little longer. This is one reason gossip can become addictive. Not all gossip is projection. Sometimes people need to process harm, compare reality, or name patterns. But some gossip has a different texture. It circles the same trait again and again. It grows more morally excited with each telling. It makes the speaker feel cleaner, sharper, superior. The absent person becomes a screen onto which the group can throw what no one wants to recognize in themselves. A small court forms. Everyone gets to be judge. No one has to be evidence. Projection thrives in groups because groups can share shadows. A community that sees itself as pure will need impure outsiders. A workplace that sees itself as rational will mock emotional people. A family that sees itself as loyal will exile anyone who names harm. A political movement that sees itself as humane will find inhumanity everywhere except its own methods. The shadow does not vanish when people gather. It becomes collective. The most dangerous projections are not private irritations. They are moral systems. History is full of groups that define themselves by projecting greed, corruption, weakness, animality, evil, or contamination onto others. The individual mechanism becomes cultural. The rejected trait is placed outside the group, then attacked as if destroying the outsider will purify the inside. This is why shadow work is not only personal self-improvement, it has ethical stakes. Whatever cannot be owned may be persecuted. That sentence should be approached carefully. It does not mean all conflict is projection. It does not mean all enemies are imagined. It does not mean harmful people should be excused because they trigger something in us. There are real dangers, real lies, real cruelty, real exploitation. Some people must be resisted. Some boundaries must be firm. Some judgments protect life. But projection asks us to become more precise. It asks whether our reaction is proportionate, whether we are seeing the person or using them, whether our judgment has curiosity in it or only appetite, whether we want truth or only the relief of locating darkness elsewhere. Cognitive dissonance explains why this is painful. People need coherence between their beliefs about themselves and the facts of their behavior or inner life. If I believe I am generous, but envy lives in me, there is tension. If I believe I am honest, but I manipulate impressions, there is tension. If I believe I am strong, but I feel needy, there is tension. If I believe I am morally above attention, but I crave recognition, there is tension. The mind wants to reduce the tension. It can do this honestly by widening the self-image. I am generous and sometimes envious. I am honest and sometimes afraid of truth. I am strong and sometimes in need. I value humility and still want to be seen. This is painful, but it makes the self more real, or the mind can reduce the tension by projection. I am not envious. They are arrogant. I am not manipulative. They are fake. I am not needy. They are pathetic. I am not angry. They are hostile. I am not selfish. They are immoral. Projection protects coherence by sacrificing truth. This is why shadow integration feels humiliating at first. It requires giving up the clean self. Not the good self, the clean self. There is a difference. A good person can contain anger, envy, vanity, fear, need, and selfish impulses without becoming ruled by them. A clean person is a fantasy, a person without contradiction, a person whose motives are always pure, a person who never wants anything ugly, petty, childish, or forbidden. Many people do not want to be good. They want to be clean. Projection is one of the ways they keep feeling clean. Marie-Louise von Franz and Robert Johnson both wrote in different ways about the importance of approaching the shadow not as an enemy to destroy, but as part of the psyche that must be recognized and related to. Integration does not mean acting out every impulse. It does not mean celebrating cruelty, indulging selfishness, or calling every dark desire authentic. That is another misunderstanding. Integration means reclaiming psychological ownership, so the disowned part no longer has to rule from exile. Anger, when denied, can become contempt. When integrated, it can become boundary. Need, when denied, can become manipulation. When integrated, it can become honest request. Ambition, when denied, can become resentment. When integrated, it can become disciplined striving. Vulnerability, when denied, can become hatred of weakness. When integrated, it can become connection. Self-interest, when denied, can become martyrdom with a knife hidden inside it. When integrated, it can become responsibility for one's own life. This is why shadow work is not about becoming darker. It is about becoming less divided. The goal is not to discover that you are secretly terrible. The goal is to stop requiring other people to carry all the qualities that would make your self-image more complicated. A person who integrates anger does not need to see aggression everywhere. A person who integrates need does not need to despise neediness. A person who integrates ambition does not need to mock everyone who tries to shine. A person who integrates weakness does not need to punish vulnerability in others. The world becomes less crowded with enemies when the self becomes less dependent on innocence. This may sound peaceful. In practice, it often begins with embarrassment. You notice that the person you hate for showing off has touched your own buried wish to be admired. You notice that the friend you call needy has touched your own hunger for reassurance. You notice that the person you call fake has touched your own social mask. You notice that the person you call selfish has touched the part of you that wants to stop being endlessly available. You notice that the weakness you mock is close to the grief you never allowed. There is a moment of inner silence when projection cracks. The mind no longer gets the full pleasure of condemnation. Something returns to sender, not as a grand revelation, more like a small, unwanted package left at the door. This is mine too. Not all of it. Maybe not in the same form. Maybe not with the same intensity. Maybe not expressed in the same harmful way. But some relationship to this trait lives in me. Some fear of it. Some hunger for it. Some memory around it. Some ban against it. Some envy of the freedom with which they display it. Some wound that makes it impossible to see calmly. That recognition is not comfortable. It damages the persona. The always kind person must admit aggression. The always independent person must admit need. The always humble person must admit hunger for recognition. The always moral person must admit mixed motives. The always rational person must admit emotional chaos. The always wounded person must admit the power they still have. This is not moral collapse, it is psychological adulthood. The child self needs the world split cleanly. Good here, bad there, innocent here, guilty there, victim here, villain there. The adult psyche must bear mixture. It must say, I can be hurt and also harmful. I can be generous and also envious. I can be honest and also self-deceiving. I can be strong and also terrified. I can see something real in another person and still use that person to avoid something real in me. That is a more difficult morality. It does not allow the cheap purity of projection. It also does not dissolve all judgment into self-blame. It asks for discrimination. This is mine. This is theirs. This is both. This is a real danger. This is an old wound. This is perception. This is projection. This is a boundary. This is a mirror. No one gets this perfect. Projection never disappears completely. The psyche will always throw material outward sometimes. We see through ourselves whether we know it or not. The question is not whether you project. The question is how quickly you become curious after the heat appears. Curiosity is the first interruption, not softness, not excuse-making, not the denial of what the other person did. Curiosity. Why this trait? Why this much heat? Why this person? Why this repeated pattern? Why do I keep finding this quality everywhere? Why does this type of person feel unbearable? What would happen if I admitted even 1% of this belongs somewhere in me? 1% is often enough to begin, because the ego can defend against total accusation. It can reject the idea that you are exactly what you despise, but it may be able to tolerate a more precise question. Where in me does this live in another form? Where was this forbidden? Where do I envy it? Where do I fear it? Where have I acted it out while calling it something else? Where have I suffered from it so deeply that I now see it everywhere? Projection does not end through self-hatred. Self-hatred is often just another defense. The person who says, I am terrible, may still avoid the more specific truth. The goal is not to condemn yourself. It is to become accurate enough that the shadow does not need a stranger's face. Return to the cafe. The person at the next table is still talking. Still a little loud. Still pleased with themselves. Maybe they really are arrogant. Maybe they really do take up too much space. Maybe your irritation is not invented. But now, something else becomes possible. Instead of turning them into a symbol, you let them become human again. Annoying maybe, flawed maybe, but not the entire embodiment of everything false. Then you look at the heat in your own chest. You do not worship it. You do not obey it. You do not instantly turn it into guilt. You simply notice that the reaction has a history. Maybe you were taught not to take up space. Maybe you were humiliated for wanting attention. Maybe you built a self around being above approval because wanting approval once made you vulnerable. Maybe their freedom to be seen touches your old prohibition against visibility. The other person leaves the cafe. The door opens. Their voice fades into the street. But the feeling in you remains. It does not follow them out. It stays in the body, sitting there like an uninvited guest. That is the clue. If they were the entire problem, the feeling should have left with them. But projection leaves a residue because the real conflict was never only outside. The other person may have triggered it, carried it, exaggerated it, or symbolized it. But something in you recognized the shape. This is not a reason to shame yourself. It is a reason to listen more carefully. Every strong judgment may contain two messages, one about the world, one about the judge. The first may say, this person is unsafe, arrogant, dishonest, cruel, manipulative, selfish, or shallow. Sometimes that message is important. The second may say, this trait has a history in me. This trait is forbidden in me. This trait frightens me. This trait tempts me. This trait resembles a wound. This trait carries a part of my shadow. Wisdom is learning to hear both without confusing them. If you only hear the first, you become righteous and blind. If you only hear the second, you may lose the ability to protect yourself. But if you hear both, perception becomes more honest. You can set boundaries without making the other person a demon. You can dislike a trait without using it as a trash bin for your own disowned life. You can recognize harm without pretending your reaction contains no history. This is where projection begins to loosen its grip. The world stops being only a courtroom. Other people stop being only evidence. The self stops being a spotless judge. Something more uncomfortable and more human appears. A person among persons. A shadow among shadows. A mind trying to see while also trying not to see. Maybe that is the best we get. Not perfect self-knowledge. Not a final integration where no projection ever happens again. Only a more honest pause between the heat and the verdict. A small space where the question can enter before the condemnation hardens. Why does this bother me so much? Not to dismiss the other person, not to excuse them, not to turn every judgment into self-analysis until discernment becomes impossible, but because the soul often hides its rejected material in the intensity of its accusations. What we condemn too quickly may be protecting us from what we cannot yet mourn, want, admit, or become. Projection lets you preserve a clean self by making someone else dirty. Integration asks whether you can survive being more whole instead. And wholeness is not clean. It is mixed, conflicted, sometimes embarrassing, sometimes frightening, sometimes tender in places where judgment used to be hard. It does not make you innocent. It makes you responsible for more of your own inner life. The person outside the cafe may never know what they carried for you. They may simply go on with their day, loud, confident, flawed human. But inside you, something has the chance to return. A piece of anger, a piece of vanity, a piece of need, a piece of ambition, a piece of weakness, a piece of life that had been forced to appear only as disgust. That return may be the beginning of a different kind of seeing, not softer, more exact. Because perhaps the most frightening thing is not that we see darkness in other people. Perhaps the most frightening thing is that other people are sometimes only the nearest wall where our own darkness can finally take shape.